Okay, today we're looking at the natural prayer. This was kind of inspired by a conversation I had after church last Sunday. During my talk last Sunday, I discussed the topic of prayer and its perceived failures. After the service, a friend raised an interesting question regarding the purpose of prayer altogether. Raising such a question can help us reach a better understanding of prayer. And actually, it was Bev that brought it up and asked, why do we pray at all? And I thought I'd never been asked that question. I just assumed everybody knew why we prayed, but then I got to thinking about what she said and the way she was asking, the place she was asking from. And it got me to thinking it's very easy to go into one frame of mind while we're in prayer, while we're trying to pray, while we have a need that we're trying to correct. And then we get up from that prayer and go about our life, and maybe our mind is a completely different place. I think it was Eric Butterworth that talked about a lot of people practice meditation. It's worry with your eyes closed. And it's that happens. But we tend to compartmentalize prayer. And so I think it was a very good question. What is the purpose of prayer? And we're not going to say, let's not pray anymore, because when you think about a formal type of prayer, or a time when you sit down specifically to deal with your consciousness and your relationship to God and a problem that you're having or whatever, that's a very important thing to be able to do. But what we want to do is become aware of how we are using our faculties the rest of the time. And why is it that we fall into a state of worry or a state of concern? Why do we let things knock us off our feet, and problems with people come up and cause us to have all kinds of negative experiences that we don't really want? And so it is good to take time to get that type of a mindset under control when we're kind of running rampant. But it's also very important to watch what we're doing all the time. As Paul said, we pray without ceasing. And I think that's where Bev was coming from, is that's what we want to be aware of. Where's our mind all the time? Nowadays, we're calling this mindfulness, to be aware of the present moment as much as possible. And a lot of people use the breath or the awareness of the heartbeat as ways to bring our attention into the now moment. And any practice that we do that achieves it, that helps us achieve this, is worth doing. But it's to just walk through your life daily, giving thanks for the good that you have, rather than trying to fend off something you don't want. It's a good shift in perception to have, shift in awareness to have, is to, when you find yourself going downhill, sliding downhill emotionally, to try to stop that, do your best to stop that, and just start giving thanks, and start, as we sang this morning, count your blessings. A very appropriate song for this talk. So if we treat prayer simply as a formula intended to invoke spiritual forces that we hope will influence outcomes in our favor, we miss the fuller scope of our involvement. We are, in fact, constantly in a state of what we might call natural prayer, with our overall mindset as the primary influence. That's where we are all the time. We're generating some influence all the time. While we may use the tools of affirmations and denials to bring about change, it is ultimately our state of mind that determines the course and overall condition of our life. So we teach these things like denial and affirmation as tools that help us understand the relationship between the condition of our mind and the condition, really, of our reaction to outer conditions. It's we say all the time that we can't necessarily stop something from happening. The old Chinese proverb, you can't stop the bird from flying over your head, but you stop him from building the nest in your hair. And the problem that we get involved in, it's the nest in our hair. It's the thinking about the thing and building it up into something that is beyond what we feel we can handle, what pushes us over the edge emotionally. And this can happen in a heartbeat, and it does happen in a heartbeat. It happens all the time. Most of us are so accustomed to responding to outer situations in ways that we feel are appropriate, even though they're negative. Everybody else is doing it. It's kind of how we were taught to think. Nobody blames us if we get angry for what that person said or did. But the question we start asking ourselves is this the mental and emotional environment that I want to live in? Is this the quality of life I want to experience? And if we're okay with that, then none of this is going to matter. None of this will make sense. But we start this whole learning process just simply by making a connection between what's going on outside of us and how we're responding to that. We don't have so much to say about what goes on outside, but we have everything to say about what goes on inside. And as we go through our daily life, if you just watch yourself, just ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, is my mind set at a 10, which is perfectly peaceful, or am I down at the 1 level? We can ask ourselves a question like this anytime and just say, where am I right now? And if I'm down in the lower numbers, I can ask myself, why am I down there? Why am I choosing to have this experience? It might just be a sense of depression, that I have no real reason that I'm there, that nothing in particular in my life's going on. It's just a choice I'm making right now. Why am I making that choice? So maybe you can't lift yourself out of that at the moment, but to just look at that, to acknowledge that it's happening. I think a lot of times we don't even acknowledge. We just think that's our natural state of mind. But it's not natural. It might be normal, but it's not natural. And so the natural prayer would have us become aware of what we're doing with our thoughts and our feelings at a given moment. So the two main faculties we employ in natural prayer are faith and imagination. Here, faith is synonymous with expectation. I say this all the time. The influence of expectation runs in our mind like a background program on our computer. It's always working, but we don't see it. What we see at the mental and emotional level are the images our faith generates through the faculty of imagination. Have you ever had something happen, maybe somebody said something, or something you perceived about this person, and you built a picture around it that ultimately you find out it has nothing to do with what that person was thinking or what that person meant? Anybody have that experience? We got one person that's had it. Two, because I've had it. I've had it 20 times yesterday, I think. And again, it happens so often, I'm not asking for hands, showing of hands, because we all do it. Whether you raise your hand or not, I know you're guilty. So this is we learn this. We learn how to do this. We build a picture around people. I had this happen with a person fairly recently, and I just had a perception of the person that was not positive. I just didn't feel like I wanted to be around them, but something happened where we were brought together, and for some reason that person complimented me like I've never been complimented in a long time. And they were thinking in a totally different way than I thought they were thinking. But my thinking about how I thought they were thinking made a very bad experience for me. And it even made me think of all the problems this person probably had, as a child or whatever, and that he grew up having this problem, and so he's projecting these issues on me. Well, I'm doing the projecting. And when that happens, it's always a fun relief. When you realize that what you thought was happening is not really happening. Well, it is happening, but it's not happening like you think it should be, or you perceive it's happening. It's happening in your own perception. So the trick there is when you're doing that, when you find yourself doing it, even if you have enough evidence to think you're justified, you're still having an experience that has nothing to do with the reality. It's a projection. And so the natural prayer would be to ask yourself, what am I doing with my imagination? And what am I doing with my expectation? I'm having a pretty crappy experience using these two faculties to imagine and to project and to expect. And it's so even if your worst expectation comes about, you have that, and then you have all the precursor to that. So it compounds the negativity. So what I'm talking about here is not easy to get hold of, but it's easy to think about when you're going through something like this, when you're having some kind of a picture, imaginary fight going on with somebody or some situation, that you say, okay, this is something that I can deal with. I can change the level of my expectation, and I can change the pictures that are going on in my mind. I can get back into a natural prayer. I can raise my level of expectation, and I can raise the imagery that I'm holding. I can change it, or I can just let go of the fight that I'm having mentally, or whatever. But it's not just situations like that. It can be just normal living. In his novel, The Alchemist, makes this observation. How many of you have read The Alchemist? If you haven't read it, it's a well worth reading. It's on. There's a talking book on YouTube, and it's narrated by Jeffrey Irons, who was in Star Trek. He was the second version of Captain Kirk, I think, in Star Trek. Does a superb job of reading this book, but it's got a lot of wisdom in it all through it. There's some strange stuff too, but it's got a lot of wisdom. And this is one of the things that he has several of his characters say this. When each day is the same as the next, it's because people fail to recognize the good things that happen in their lives every day that the sun rises. So this idea that each day is the same as the last, that's an expectation. And so he deals with this idea in The Alchemist, in the book, through the various characters. And the star of the show, of course, is the shepherd boy, who gives up, or he goes into being a shepherd so he can travel, so he can see the world, see his world. And he wants to see more than that. So that's the story. It's quite an adventure that he goes on. But the level of expectation that he talks about is people get up every day and life is the same, and all we do is get up and fulfill our needs and do whatever's in front of us to get through this day in a fairly peaceful manner. But if you think about that, think about how you think about that. Where is your level of expectation with your life? Where's your what kinds of images do you project in your daily experience, for your daily experience? And that's what we want to become aware of. And that's why the shepherd boy breaks out of that. And the shepherd boy even talks about the sheep, that think the same thing, that each day is going to be the same and all of that. And he doesn't have a real high regard for how sheep think, but he, likes them and all. But he's a pretty philosophical shepherd boy by design, of course. So this attitude is the mindset that we want to pay attention to. When we expect each day to be the same as the next, we are we are training the creative power of our imagination to match our level of expectation. I found myself doing that this week, and Diane's song, Count Your Blessings, I don't think we've sang that here before because I had to find it and look it up and type it, and it's been a while. But I was thinking about it on the way over here, and there was several things that were going on, and I just thought, that's a good idea to count your blessings, and I just started naming the things in my life that I like, the things that I appreciate. I have a tendency, maybe you do, I'm confessing here, but I have a tendency to focus on the things I don't like. Now, none of you would do that because you listen to me and I tell you not to do that, so I'm the only one that probably does it. But I will find myself doing that, focusing on things I don't like, especially if there's a challenge that's going on. I'll think of all the various angles of that challenge that I don't like. And that's, again, the level of expectation and the imagery that you're using. So is there an obligation to do that? And you say, well, the obligation is that the thing is there. It's a reality. Well, is it? Because usually what you're thinking about is not where you are. It's someplace else. And you're projecting, you're thinking about something else that might happen or that could happen, that could unfold. Or it's just an unpleasant thing you don't want hanging over your head. And so it's the quality of life, as I say often, is that thing that's going on in our heads, all that internal chatter, that internal dialogue is, who's the guy that said that? I can't remember. But it's the internal talking, the internal voice that's going on all the time, and the pictures that we're holding. Something pops up, we make this big thing out of it, or any kind of thing that is not something we really want. And it's of our creation, and can we do something about it? Yes, we can. We can interrupt that by beginning to count our blessings, by beginning to think about, what in my life do I like? What is good that's going on? And I started just naming things. Things like I enjoy recording music. I enjoy writing. I enjoy you guys. I enjoy coming to church. I enjoy this new building. I love our air conditioning. It's great. And I love a car wash. I ran twice through a car wash last week, 2 cars. And I love the feeling of a clean car, coming out on the other side. I get a little claustrophobic inside the thing, but there's a million things you can just stop and give thanks for. Give thanks for a good meal. We had our 47th wedding anniversary last Monday. Gave thanks that I'm still standing, And we'll probably have 48. But there's a million things that we experience, that we have in our life, but when something's going wrong, that's the thing. That's where our focus goes, and our imagination goes wild on that thing. And so it looks like that's all that's happening is this bad thing, or this thing I'm not looking forward to. I had a strange dream last night. I was applying for a church in Chicago, and it was a black church, and I was talking to an all-black board, and I was just thinking in my mind, I don't belong here. I like these people. It's a wonderful feeling to be here, but I don't know why I am. Because, first of all, I don't want to be in Chicago. That's one of the last places on earth I want to be. So, you have a day where you have enough problems, then you go to sleep and you have this big problem, and it's just like you can't get away from it sometimes. So we were on the way to look at the sanctuary. The church was a mansion. It was a converted mansion. And I asked them, is this the sanctuary that we're in? They said, no. So we were on our way to see the sanctuary. And I woke up and I was thankful. That's another blessing. I'm glad I woke up from that dream, because I do not want to apply at any church, let alone one in Chicago. But it was, and I've spoken at 2 all-black churches, and they were 2 of the best experiences I've ever had. And I was very anxious about both times, because I didn't think I would be good at that. But they loved me and I loved them. It was a wonderful experience. One was in Miami, Florida, and one was in Detroit, Michigan. But they were both good, very good experiences. And another example of how in my life I anticipated something, feared something, didn't think I could do something, and you go and you have this incredible experience. It's just completely different. So why do we do that to ourselves? That's a prayer. And it's a natural prayer, but it's a negative natural prayer. And what we want to do is become aware of how we're doing this and why, and do we have to do it? Are we obligated to do it? The answer that we usually come up with, we never really have this conversation, but if we did, the answer we would come up with, of course I'm concerned about it, because it's a thing that's going to happen. It's a thing that I'm going to be confronted with. The thing is, I don't know all of the possible options that can unfold during that experience. That's what I'm not taking into account, because there's no way I can know that. So I'm giving myself a really bad experience prior to a real good experience. And what's gained from doing that? Nothing. It's just a habit. It's a knee-jerk reaction. And it's an interesting thing to observe. But all things considered, this may seem reasonable. It may seem reasonable that we are having a negative reaction. If we are content with the monotony of each day being the same as the next, why bother investing effort in fixing something that isn't broken? See, this will be where a lot of people are. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but, life is life. Life is what it is. So why even try to change anything that I'm going through? And will changing my attitude actually change the events in my life? And the answer to that actually is yes, it does. It changes the way you experience the event. Because if you're up to your neck in mud, you don't have to be up to your neck in mud in that experience. The mud is that negative energy that we pour into the experience. Do we have to be in that? Is that what life really is? And the answer to that is no. That's my reaction. That's what I'm creating. And if that's what I think life is, you can talk to anybody that believes life is just what it is. There's not much I can do about it. They won't respond to a talk like this. They won't respond to these ideas in a positive way. There'll be others that do. I got a call one day from a young man that had become a NASCAR driver, but prior to that, he was living in a cardboard box under a bridge. His mother gave him my book, Practical Guide to Prosperous Living. And something in the book, I don't know what it was because he didn't tell me, but something in the book lit him up. And he changed his life by changing the way he thought about his life. His daytime job became an ambulance driver. And so he must have loved to drive fast, because he did that, and then he was a NASCAR driver. But something lit up in him, taking him from a homeless situation to one where he was doing pretty well, enjoyed his life. And he didn't think he could do that. He just was reduced to nothing. I mean, he did express that to me. He said he just felt like he was worthless. And he didn't go into why he felt that way, what brought that on, if it was a upbringing of some kind. Apparently his mother was a good influence and wanted to help. But what changed was his mind, his thinking, his expectation, his imagery going on in his mind. Every day he woke up in a cardboard box, he probably just relived that before the day was over, just projected, expected. And then something opened his spiritual eyes. And I don't take any kind of credit for that because I don't know what I did, except write a book. But I've had other people respond to that book in positive ways as well. And you never know what somebody needs. You never know what somebody's going to hear. That happens on YouTube all the time. I get notes from people that are very grateful, and I don't know why they're grateful, but something they saw in the program opened their mind to something. I got one the other day that just thanked me that there's somebody out here talking like this, you know. And to me, it's normal talk. I can hardly stand to listen to myself because it's so boring, because I have heard it so much. But it's not boring to someone that's never heard it. And, you know, it represents a whole way of life that if they grew up in a church, in a standard church, they've never heard anything quite like this, where it puts the ball in their court and they're able to take whatever situation they're in and do something about it because they can do something about themselves. And that's one of the most difficult things. But I guess I'm surprised at how few people understand that. Beth and I were at a store yesterday, and a woman came up, obviously homeless. She wanted 32 cents. I don't know why she wanted 32 cents. I didn't ask her. I didn't have 32 cents. So I gave her $1. I had $1. And I said, keep the change. You know, I would have given her more if I would have had it, because just something about that situation. But if I would have said, you know, if you'd come to my church, I can give you a lot more than 32 cents. I can give you a new way to think about yourself. I have a feeling she would not have been interested in that. But I don't know. I'm just, again, projecting. But there is a mindset in our country that, in all countries, that says there's nothing I can do about my situation. But there is a lot you can do about yourself. And that's what the natural prayer is. Let's tune that into a little bit higher level. What are we expecting? You know, I could have gone into a big conversation with this woman yesterday. What do you expect every day when you get up? And I can imagine how she would respond. I don't know if I would be correct, but just from the looks, the countenance, and just everything about her seemed that she was expecting pretty much the same thing every day. And that 32 cents or $1, that was a big bonus, you know, not expecting that. But that's, you know, how do you address that? You want to reach out and grab a person and say, there are things you can do that will get you out of this hole. If you want to get out of this hole, do you want to be healed? You know, that was the question Jesus asked the man laying by the pool. Do you want to be healed? I always thought that was a strange thing to ask, because obviously the guy wanted to be healed, but Jesus probably saw a different mindset. There are folks that don't want to be healed. They want to get up and have every day be the same and expect every day to be the same because they don't deserve any better. It's a self-image thing. And that may go back to childhood. It may go back to some failure through life. It may go back to a thousand things. But if one person can grab their bootstraps and pull themselves out of a situation, then all people can do it. If one person can pioneer a change of life by demonstrating a change of thought, then all people can do it. That's why Jesus would say something so ludicrous as the things I do, you can do also, and even greater things. It makes perfect sense when you realize he's talking about how you're using your vision and how you're using your faith, your level of expectation. He would heal somebody. He didn't heal anybody. He said, your faith has made you whole. A change of mind, a change of expectation. It's a very powerful thing. We think Jesus had some superpower, and that's what religion has projected on him. I think he would find that repulsive. But that's not what I taught. I was not talking about me. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about what you can do. I've learned how to make this breakthrough, and I'm trying to show you how to do it. And he never really grabbed people by the shoulders and shook them and said, look, you know, change your thinking. The rich young man that came up and wanted eternal life, you know, he said, sell everything you've got. He wasn't telling him to sell everything he had. He's saying, change the way you're thinking about your self-worth. It's not in your possessions, it's in you. And the young man apparently thought he could buy eternal life. He could do the right thing, you know, perfect behavior or whatever. A lot of people think it's about being good, but it's not about being good. It's about awakening to your goodness, about awakening to your power of choice, and how far that goes. If we're restless and dissatisfied with our life, it will be advantageous to recognize the good things that present themselves and raise our expectation and appreciation for these gifts that each new day brings. And again, that's count your blessings. Just do that, you know, on your way home. Just start thinking of all the things that are good in your life. And maybe you already do this, which is a good habit to get into. It's amazing how easy that is to forget. But what an injection of energy it is when you do it. And you do it from a mindful and meaningful way. Think about all the things you appreciate about your life, about the people in your life, about the opportunities that you have, about your upbringing. You know, a lot of us will focus on all the things we hated about our upbringing. But there were a lot of good things that happened. And when you start thinking about them, there's a writing exercise called Writing the Natural Way. I can't think of the author at the moment, but it's an excellent book. But you start out with an idea, you write it on some idea on a piece of paper in the middle of the typing paper, circle it, and then let that idea generate another idea. And you write that down, you circle that, and you draw an arrow from the center to this other one. And if that idea generates a thought, you just keep doing that until your whole page is covered. And it's amazing if you start thinking about, use an exercise like this to think about, what am I grateful for in my life? Write something down, you circle it, and when that triggers something else, write that down, circle that, draw an arrow to that, and just keep doing it until you've got this web of things that you're grateful for. And you'll have enough to write a book. You'll have enough to make an outline for an article, and that, to me, is what is very therapeutic about this kind of stuff. As you start writing about what you're grateful for, it triggers something in you that doesn't come up otherwise. It brings out the subconscious stuff. That's why I love writing books, because it forces me to research. And I found a new program called, it's a AI program, but it's checks your grammar, spelling, and all that stuff. But it's, pro writing something or other. But it hooks into your word processor, and the thing I like about it is it triggers new ideas. It doesn't write for you. It would, but I've never liked yet what it's written for me, because it never quite captures, you know, what I'm trying to say. But it has several features in it that will correct your grammar and all that, but it also gives suggestions that maybe you hadn't thought about. And it's like, that's how this whole thing works. The answer's there, but if we're so locked into a certain mindset, we can't get out of that. And so we expect every day to be the same. So a program like this is very helpful in terms of writing. To me, it's been a whole new... I've got this book. It's probably 250,000 words now. It's huge. And I'm trying to get it down into something sensible, and this program is very good at helping do that, putting things together. It's a very complicated book, because I talked about the things I've been talking about here for the last couple of years, and that's the difference between the Jesus of history, the Jesus, the mystic, and the people that wrote about Jesus. And so trying to get that into a place where it's not boring, it's inspirational and all that. New ideas, a new way. You look at something you've written a year ago, and you're trying to get it, you get lost in it, in other words. So any new ideas help stimulate a new way of thinking. And you take the core idea that you have and expand on it. It's like brainstorming. You know, that's really what it is. It's a computerized brainstorming, and it's a pretty valuable program. It's a subscription. You have to buy it, but it's not expensive. Pro Writing Aid is the name of the program. Pro Writing Aid. If you like writing at all, it's worth having. Natural prayer does not center on a single aspect, but encompasses our overall quality of life. It directs our awareness to each present moment, every individual we encounter, and any circumstance that calls for creative resolution. We naturally raise our own expectations and the imaginative visions that these inspire. So we're not advocating stop praying for specific things, because we want to keep doing that. But it's the overall, we don't want to close our eyes and worry. We want to get above that level of thought. And this would be the natural prayer. We are all praying all the time. We're doing all of the elements in prayer. We are employing them all the time, 24/7. Thank you for watching this week's program. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with others. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we appreciate your help. We have many subjects in our video lineup, so feel free to take a look. If there's a topic you don't see and would like me to address, just put it in the comment section. I'd love to know what's on your mind. To subscribe to this channel, simply click our logo. Thanks again for your interest in independent unity, and have a wonderful week.